Hello everyone, welcome to Wednesday Folk Tales, Yom Tov. I hope everybody enjoys today's stories. A nice little bit of escapism in the middle of the week. This week's story is called One Eye, Two Eyes, Three Eyes, and it was requested by our lovely Liz Fahey. I think that's how they say her name, Liz Fahey or Liz Fahey. I'm not quite sure how you pronounce your surname, Liz, I'm sorry. But anyway, Liz is one of our lovely Haveners. She's requested this, one of our favourites. I'd never heard of it, so I'm very, very happy to read it out for you and for Liz. It's by the Brothers Grimm, so that's good, because we do like the Brothers Grimm. And then for your second story this week, I was asked about reading stories about mythical creatures, so I chose the Kelpie. And I'll be telling you all about what a Kelpie is and reading you a short story about the Kelpie. So I hope you can sit back, relax, and enjoy my reading of One Eye, Two Eyes, Three Eyes by the Brothers Grimm. And I really do hope you enjoy it. There was once a woman who had 3 daughters, of whom the eldest was named One Eye, because she only had one eye in the middle of her forehead. The second had 2 eyes, like other people, and she was called Two Eyes. And the youngest had 3 eyes, 2 like her middle sister, and 1 in the middle of her forehead. And she was called Three Eyes. Now, because 2 eyes looked like other people, our mother and our sisters couldn't endure her. They couldn't abide her. And they said to her, "You are not better than common folks. You with your 2 eyes. You don't belong to us." So they pushed her around. They gave her all their old clothes to wear. They gave her the scraps from the table. You know, there was never enough for her to eat. And they treated her really badly. Well, one day, little Two Eyes was sent to the fields to take care of the goats. And she was often very, very hungry, although our sisters had as much as they liked to eat. So one day she sat herself on a mound in the field and began to weep and cry so bitterly that 2 little rivulets flowed from her eyes. And once, in the midst of her sorrow, she looked up and she saw a woman standing near her who said, "What are you weeping for, little Two Eyes?" "Can't help weeping," she replied, "for I have 2 eyes, like other people. My mother and sisters can't bear me. They push me about from one corner to another, make me wear their old clothes. They give me nothing to eat, but just leftovers, so I'm always hungry. Today they gave me so little I'm nearly starved." "Dry up your tears, little Two Eyes," said the wise woman. "I will tell you something which will prevent you from ever being hungry again. You only have to say to your own little goat, 'Little goat, if you're able, pray deck out my table.' And immediately there will be a pretty table before you full of all sorts of good things to eat, and as much of it as you like. And when you've had enough and you don't want the table any more, all you have to say is, 'Little goat, when you're able, remove my nice table,' and it will vanish from in front of your eyes." Then the wise woman went away. Now, thought little Two Eyes, I will try to see what she says is true, for I am really very hungry. So she said, "Little goat, if you're able, pray deck out my table." And the words were scarcely spoken when a beautiful little table stood right in front of her. It had a white cloth and plates, and knives and forks and silver spoons, and such a delicious dinner, smoking hot as if it had just come from the kitchen. Then little Two Eyes sat down and said the shortest grace she knew. Pray God be our guest for all time. Amen. Before she allowed herself to taste anything. But oh, how she did enjoy her dinner. And when she'd finished, she said, as the wise woman had taught her, "Little goat, when you're able, remove my nice table." And in a moment the table and everything upon it had disappeared. "Oh, that's a pleasant way to keep house," said Little Two Eyes, and she felt quite contented and happy. Well, in the evening when she went home with the goat, she found an earthenware dish with a few little scraps which her sisters had left for her, but she didn't touch them. The next morning she went away with the goat, leaving them behind what they'd placed for her. The first and second times they didn't really take much notice, but when it happened every day, they said to one another, "There's something strange about Little Two Eyes. She leaves us supper every day, and all that food has all gone to waste. She's getting food somewhere else." So they were determined to find out the truth, and they arranged that when Two Eyes took her goat into the field, One Eye would go with her to take particular notice of what she did and discover if anything was brought for her to eat and drink. So when Two Eyes started out with her goat, One Eye said to her, "I'm going to go with you today to see if the goat gets her food properly, while you're watching the rest." But Two Eyes knew what she had in her mind. So she drove the goat into the long grass and said, "Come on, One Eye, let's sit down here and have a rest. I'll sing to you." One Eye seated herself down, and not being accustomed to walk very far or to be out in the heat of the sun, she began to feel tired, and as the Two Eyes kept on singing, she closed her one eye and fell asleep. When Two Eyes saw this, she knew that One Eye couldn't betray her, so she said, "Little goat, if you're able, come, please deck out my table." And it appeared in front of her. She ate and drank very, very quickly, and when she finished, she said, "Little goat, when you're able, please come and clear away my table." It vanished in the twinkling of an eye. And when Two Eyes woke One Eye up and said, "Little One Eye, you are a clever one to watch goats, because while you're asleep, they could be running all over the world. Come on, let's go home." So they went back to the house, and Little Two Eyes again left the scraps on the dish untouched. And One Eye couldn't tell her mother whether Little Two Eyes had eaten anything in the field, because she had to say, "I'm sorry, I fell asleep." So the next day the mother said to Three Eyes, "You go to the field with her this time and find out whether there's anyone who brings food to Little Two Eyes, because she's got to be drinking and eating secretly." So when Little Two Eyes started with her goat, Three Eyes followed and said, "I'm going to walk with you today to see if you feed the goat properly and watch all of them the right way." But Two Eyes knew what was going on, so she led the goat through the long grass to tire Three Eyes out. And at last she said, "Come on, let's sit down here and have a rest, and I'll sing to you." She was glad to sit down, Three Eyes, because she wasn't used to walking around either, and the heat of the sun was getting to her. And as her sister continued to sing, she was obliged to close two of her eyes, but she kept one eye open. But she didn't let Two Eyes see that. So she was awake the whole time with one eye, but had two eyes firmly closed. But Two Eyes thought she was asleep. So thinking that, she made her speech to her little goat. The table came with all the good things on it, and then, it was all carried away when she finished eating. And when Two Eyes had finished, Three Eyes had cunningly seen it all. But she still pretended to be asleep. And her sister went up to her, woke her up, and they went home. That evening, when little Two Eyes left the supper again they placed aside for her, Three Eyes said to her mother, "I know where the proud thing gets all our food and drink from." And then she described everything she'd seen in the field. "I saw it all with my one eye, for she made my other two eyes close with us singing, but luckily the one in my forehead stayed open." Then the envious mother cried out to poor little Two Eyes, "You wish to have better food than we, do you? You shall lose your wish." And she took up a butcher's knife, went out, and struck the good little goat in the heart, and it fell dead. When little Two Eyes saw this, she went out to the field, seated herself on the mound, and wept the most bitter tears. Presently the wise woman came before her again, and she said, "Little Two Eyes, why do you weep?" "Ah, I must weep. The goat, who every day spread my table so beautifully, has been killed by my mother, and I shall again have to suffer from hunger and sorrow." "Little Two Eyes," said the wise woman, "I will give you some good advice. Go home and ask your sister to give you the inside of the slaughtered goat, and then go and bury it in the ground in front of the house door." On saying this, the wise woman vanished. Little Two Eyes went home quickly and said to her sister, "Dear sister, give me some part of my good little goat. I don't want anything valuable. Just give me what's inside." Our sister laughed and said, "Of course you can have that if you don't want anything else." So little Two Eyes took the insides, and in the evening, when it was all quiet, buried it in the ground outside of the house door, as the wise woman had told her to do. The next morning, when they all rose and went to look out of the window, there stood the most wonderful tree, with leaves of silver and apples of gold hanging between them. Nothing in the wide world could be more beautiful or more costly. They none of them knew how did the tree get to come there, except little Two Eyes. She supposed it had grown up from the inside of the goat, for it stood over where she buried it in the earth. Then the mother said to little One Eye, "Climb up, my child, and break off some of the fruit from the tree." One Eye climbed up, but when she tried to catch a branch and pluck one of the apples, it escaped from her hand. And so it happened every time she made the attempt, and do what she would, she couldn't reach one. "Well, Three Eyes," said the mother, "climb up and try and see what you can do. Perhaps you'll be able better to see with your three eyes than One Eye can." Well, One Eye slid down from the tree, and Three Eyes climbed back up. But Three Eyes wasn't more skillful. With all her efforts, she couldn't pull the branches down either, or the fruit near enough to pluck even a leaf, for they sprang back as she put out her hand. At last the mother was impatient and climbed up herself, but with no more success, for as she appeared to grasp a branch or fruit, her hand closed upon thin air. "May I try?" said little Two Eyes. "Perhaps I may succeed." "You indeed," cried her sisters. "You with your 2 eyes. What can you do?" But Two Eyes climbed up, and the golden apples did not fly back from her when she touched them, but almost laid themselves on her hand, and she plucked them one after another until she carried down from the tree, and her little apron was full. The mother took them from her and gave them to her sisters, as she said little Two Eyes couldn't handle them properly. But this was only from jealousy, because little Two Eyes was the only one who could reach the fruit, and she went into the house feeling more spiteful to her than ever before. Well, it happened while all the three sisters were standing under the tree. A young knight rode by. "Run away quick and hide yourself, little Two Eyes. Hide yourself somewhere, for we will be quite ashamed for you to be seen." Then they pushed the little girl in great haste under an empty cask, which stood near the tree, and several of the golden apples that she had plucked along with her. Well, as the knight came nearer, they saw he was a handsome man, and presently he halted and looked with wonder and pleasure this beautiful tree with its silver leaves and golden fruit. At last he spoke to the sisters and asked, "To whom does this beautiful tree belong? If a man possessed only one branch, he might obtain all he wished for in all the world." "The tree belongs to us," said the two sisters, "and we'll break off a branch for you if you like." They gave themselves a great deal of trouble in trying to do as they offered, but all to no purpose, for the branches and the fruit evaded their efforts and sprang back at every touch. "This is wonderful," exclaimed the knight, "that the tree should belong to you, and yet you're not even able to gather a branch." Well, they persisted, however, in declaring that the tree was their own property. And at this moment, little Two Eyes, who was angry because her sisters hadn't told the truth, caused two of the golden apples to slip out from under the cask, and they rolled on until they reached the feet of the knight's horse. But when he saw them, he asked in astonishment where they'd come from. The two ugly maidens replied that they had another sister, but they dared not let him see her, for she only had two eyes, like common people, and was named Little Two Eyes. But the knight was very anxious to see her, and he called out, "Little Two Eyes, come here." And then Two Eyes, quite comforted from the empty cask, the knight was very anxious to see her. He called out, "Little Two Eyes, come here." Then Little Two Eyes, quite comforted from the empty cask, and the knight was astonished to find her so beautiful. Sorry for ruining that sentence. Then he said, "Little Two Eyes, can you break off a branch of that tree for me?" "Oh, yes," she replied, "I can, very easily, for the tree belongs to me." And she climbed up, and without any trouble, broke off a branch with its silver leaves and golden fruit and gave it to the knight. He looked down at her as she stood by his horse and said, "Little Two Eyes, what shall I give you for this?" "Ah," she said, "I suffer from hunger and thirst and sorrow and trouble from early morning till late at night. If you would only take me with you and release me, I should be so happy." Then the knight lifted the little maiden onto his horse and rode home with her to his father's castle. And there she was given beautiful clothes to wear and as much to eat and drink as she wished. And as she grew up, the knight loved her so dearly that they were married with great rejoicings. Now, when the two sisters saw Little Two Eyes carried away by the handsome young knight, they were overjoyed at their good fortune. "The wonderful tree belongs to us now," they said. "Even if we can't break off a branch, yet everybody who passes will stop to admire it and make acquaintance with us, and who knows, we may get husbands after all." But when they rose the next morning, the tree had gone, it had vanished, and with it all their hopes. And on this very morning, when Little Two Eyes looked out of her chamber window, when she was in the castle, she saw, to her great joy, that the tree had followed her. Well, Little Two Eyes lived for a long time in great happiness, but she heard nothing of her sisters, until one day two poor old women came to the castle to beg for alms. Little Two Eyes saw them, and looking earnestly in their faces, she recognised her two sisters, who had become so poor that they were obliged to beg their bread from door to door. But the good sister received them most kindly and promised to take care of them and give them all they wanted. And then they did indeed repent and felt sorry for having treated her so badly in their youthful days. And there you have the story of One Eye, Two Eyes, Three Eyes. I do apologise for all the little slip-ups I made. But I really do hope that you enjoyed it. And Liz, I hope you enjoyed it too. So, if you're watching, please let me know what you thought of it in the comments. And if it brought back some happy memories for you. And if any of the rest of you have heard of it or read it, let me know how it made you feel. Now, just before I read you our next story, I just wanted to ask you if you wanted me to talk about the Velveteen Rabbit, because I thought that would be a good choice for next week's story, but it will take up the whole of our time together. So if you could let me know in the comments, then I will read that to you next week, because it's a long one. But I've never read the Velveteen Rabbit, so because it wasn't a story that I'd come across when I was younger. I think it's probably more of an American story, I think. But I haven't read it yet. So if you would like me to read you the Velveteen Rabbit, please let me know in the comments and I'll read that for you next week. Now, moving on, we have a story of a mythical creature, because I've been asked if I would read a story about some mythical creatures. So the mythical creature this week is the Kelpie. Now, the Kelpie is from Scotland in the United Kingdom. It's a shape-shifting water spirit which inhabits the lochs and pools of Scotland. Lochs are what everybody else would call a lake. It's spelt L-O-C-H, but you say the CH with a sound. It's very much like with Hebrew when you say L'chaim or Chaya. That's a girl's name, Chaya. It's what I call my friend Kate. Hello, Kate, if you're here. Yom Tov Chaya. But it's got that's the intonation of the word, so it's Loch. Usually described as having a horse-like appearance, the Kelpie can also adopt a human form. Or if you remember, the Kelpie, for those paranormal fans who are watching today, that appeared in last week's Serba, didn't it? Siobhan the Kelpie. The Kelpie can also adopt human form. There have been reports that when taken human form, the Kelpie still keeps its horse's hooves, which have caused many of the Christian faith to associate this creature with the devil. This can be seen in Robert Burns's poem, Address to the Deil, which was addressed to the devil. Every sizable body of water in Scotland comes with its own Kelpie story, with the most extensive being those of Loch Ness. The most common water spirit in Scottish folklore, the Kelpie's aquatic habitat, has been reputed by many throughout history to contain Kelpies. Some believe that the Kelpie is a lakeside dweller, living beside rivers rather than under the water. Usually described as a powerful, beautiful black horse, the Kelpie preys on humans it encounters. Some believe that Kelpies are lonely creatures seeking human companionship. However, others believe that these creatures will take their victims into the water and devour them, throwing the entrails to the water's edge when they're done. The Kelpie's hooves are reversed, and it can extend the length of its back when in horse form to allow it to take more than one rider into the water at a time. So here is the little bit of folklore that I've managed to find out about a Kelpie. It's just a short story. One story goes that a group of children were playing on the water's edge at Loch Ness. And as the water began to ripple and foam nearby, they glanced over to see a beautiful black horse trotting over to them from the water. Excited to see such a beautiful horse, the children stroked it and circled it. Getting on its back, the children had attempted to ride their new friend. However, one child remained on the ground next to the horse. He looked up and reached the creature's neck to stroke him. And as he did this, his hand became stuck to the horse's neck. And becoming terrified, the boy tried with all his strength to remove his hand from the horse's neck, but he was completely stuck. And as the horse started to pull him in, with the other children on its back, will pull him into the loch, the boy decided he must cut his hand off to escape. And in doing so, the horse returned to the water, taking the children on its back with it. In freeing himself, the boy ran to seek help, sorting out his severed hand and trying to get to the other children. Waiting at the water's edge for days, the boy was determined to find any sign of his friends. However, the children were never seen again. So that's a Kelpie for you. A shape-shifting, horse-like creature who lives on the edge of lochs and devours human beings. Interesting. Well, if I ever go up to Scotland again, and I know my husband loves the areas around Loch Lomond, I'll be keeping my eye open, at least one of my two eyes. I'll be keeping one of them open just in case I see a black horse with hooves reversed, running along the sands, and looking to see if it wants any riders. I don't think so. I don't think it'd want to take my wheelchair on its back either. Too much like a bad job. So, what did you think of the Kelpie story? Are there any other mythical creatures that you'd like to hear about? There are lots and lots, I don't think I realised just how many there were. When I was looking into all kinds of mythical creatures, an orc is a mythical creature. And of course, our paranormal crew, they know their favourite orc is called Borg. But there are, there's leprechauns, gnomes. Well, of course, obviously there's fairies, but there's different types of fairies. Not just good and bad ones, but there's water sprites, there's elves, there's, oh my goodness, there's just all manner of different creatures that are all part of our folklore. Mermaids, mermen, just to name but a few. So that, my friends, were your two stories for your Wednesday folk tales, and I really, really do hope that you enjoyed them. I've got a really funny feeling that I've mentioned the Velveteen Rabbit to you twice. If I have, please forgive me, because I actually don't have a brain inside this skull. I actually have a cauliflower that's slowly being drained through a colander. And on days when I'm particularly sharp, the cauliflower is replaced by a cabbage. Sometimes carrots rattle around in there. If I'm really, really good, one of these days I'm going to have an Irish stew, I think, inside my brain. Because, honest to goodness, I'll say things and then immediately forget I've said them. Or, I can remember what I did when I was a child And when I was obviously, yesterday or last week, but can I remember what I did an hour ago? Or said an hour ago? No. So I think it's just age and being a bit tired and one thing and another. Right, I'm starting to witter on now, and that's no good at all. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Thank you very, very much for watching. I do hope you've enjoyed today's stories. If you've got any suggestions for any other kinds of stories that you want me to read to you, please let me know. I did have another idea. Does anybody want to hear anything about true crime? We could try that on Mondays if you like. In between talking about other things, if you want to know about true crime, because I quite like true crime, I'll try and sort that out for you if you like. But you remember, I am led by you. You are the ones who tell me what you'd like me to do, and I will do it. I can't walk around, upside down with my head in a bucket of cement. That I can't do. I also can't do the splits. Even when I could walk, I couldn't do the splits. So I can't do that. So there's an awful lot of things I can't do. But whatever I can do, and it's feasible, I will. So on that happy note, my lovely friends, all my lovely Haveners, anybody new, all the OGs, and those in between, I love you all. I really do. I don't just say it. I do love you, because you're in here now. You've all grown on me. I told you the other week, you've given me my life purpose, because if it wasn't for you, the Haven wouldn't be here. So it's all down to you guys. I will see the Paranormal Crew on Friday. Final episode. Yes, it is the final episode of the series of Serba. Ooh, it's getting exciting now. So the Paranormal Crew, looking forward to that. And for everyone else, I hope you all have a wonderful weekend, and I'll see you on Monday. So in the meantime, take care. Wherever you are in the world, enjoy yourself. Bye-bye for now. Bye-bye.